Hey everybody, James with Love My Pups. Part C coming up. So part C, natural whelp. But just before we do that, there's something else that I should have talked about in a previous one and I didn't do it. And it's to do with what the progesterone levels are going to be at the back end of this progesterone cycle when we are ready to think about whelp. So remember what we had here was, we were talking about this potential, the right day to be having a C-section. There was a couple of day window. This is this 2-day window. And so so what we were saying was that we're looking for a progesterone level of less than 2.5 nanograms per milliliter is safe to have puppies. So all the time I'll get people calling up and saying, I did a reverse progesterone test and my dog's at a 6. How many days will it be before she's ready to have a C-section? And that is an absolutely fair enough answer, but the problem is there is no meaningful answer to it. Because the slope of this thing varies by dogs. And so, if you look at one dog might have a slope like this, another dog's slope might be like that. And so unfortunately, the actual progesterone level is meaningless until it gets to less than 2.5, and that's all I can tell you. So if you say, oh, my dog's at 3.5, will it be ready tomorrow? I can't answer the question because I don't know. It may even go up. The progesterone level may flatten out. You only thing that counts is you've got to have a progesterone level of less than 2.5 if you're going off reverse progesterone tests to be safe on having a C-section. All right, so that's out of the way. So now we're back to this natural whelp. So first thing is that I don't do natural whelps. I used to when I had labs many years ago. So this is not something that's really fresh in my mind. And so for that reason, I don't promise the latest, bestest information on this, but I'm going to try and get it right for you. Okay, so I think the first thing is this. Well, there's something else here too. If you are having a Frenchie, and or a dog that's going to have a C-section, you can always get caught short and puppies can come before you think they should be, or you could even be driving to the vet and puppies are starting to pop out. Be prepared. So even if you decide you're going to have a C-section, this information is still relevant to you, and certainly the supplies that you should have on hand for a natural whelp could apply to those people who think they're going to have a C-section because they got their timing wrong. So I think that the first thing is just like a Boy Scout, be prepared. You got to be prepared. So get ready for this. Get ready for this. Don't get ready for this when she starts going into labor. Be ready for it ahead of time. So what do you need? So now we sell a puppy care kit. Our puppy care kit includes all of this stuff that you're going to need, plus a double chunk more stuff for 99 bucks. So what do you need? Well, you need to have an appropriate place for this whelp to take place. It's going to be messy. So you don't want to have this on a living room carpet, especially if it's white, because if it is, you're buying a rug to put over the top of it. So be prepared, have a place, needs to be warm and comfortable that you can camp out with your dog while this whelp process is going on. So, number one, location. Let's go have a decent location. Let's have a nice location that's warm and quiet and that mama feels safe. What we used to do is we used to go get a large refrigerator box for labs and we'd cut that thing in half and we'd use that as our whelping area, and we could get inside it too. The whole thing could be folded up and thrown away because it's going to get mucky and junky. Remember, every puppy that's born has water around its embryonic sac and it's attached with an umbilical cord to a placenta. And I mean, it's a messy operation. So if you're squeamish, don't be squeamish because you're going to be washing your hands. All right, so what are the things so we want a nice location that's warm and quiet. And on that front, this is pretty important. When you're getting close, you're a day out, you think it's close to having a natural whelp, don't let your dog outside by yourself. I've done this by mistake and got in trouble. What happens? By nature, these dogs are trying to find a suitable place to have puppies, and if they're outside, they may be under a bush. I had a French Bulldog one time, my very first Frenchie. Actually, it wasn't the first litter, but anyway, it's close. Let the dog out unattended, Came back in, 10 minutes later. 7 hours later, we went out for a C-section. We had a single puppy. And 2 days later, I found a dead French Bulldog puppy under the bush. Not good. So, if you're taking a dog outside, on a leash. Her behavior can change when she's close to being whelped. She can get scared by cars, other animals and dogs. You just don't want any of that. So take her out on a leash, attended. So if the best thing you can do is if she has a bowel movement before she starts all this process coming. So, because she's going to be camped out, for the next 12 hours while she's having these puppies. All right, so location, nice, warm, quiet place. Your dog has been taken out and to stretch her legs and she's peed, good. We want some supplies on hand, and these are the things that we must have. I would have some latex gloves. You'll find it's easier to grip hold of a puppy if you've got to do some help having a puppy born if you've got gloves on, besides the fact it keeps things sterile. You need to have some towels, because when these puppies are born, they've got to be dried off and warmed up and roughed up as quickly as possible. So you need some towels, and quite a few towels, because you're going to go through them. I mean, you need to have one hand towel for every puppy that's going to be born, and if you have 12 puppies, that's 12 hand towels. Have those ahead of time. You need some stainless steel scissors. You've got to be able to cut that's spelled wrong, but that's fine, you know what I mean. You need some scissors, and they need to be sterilized. So I don't like the big cheap scissors you buy from Walmart. It doesn't look very professional at all. You need some small, more like cuticle scissors. Stainless steel's better, and they want to be clean, and sterilize them. Stick them in some alcohol. You need some forceps would be best. Some forceps would be the best thing to have, because we'll talk about this more in a moment, but you've got to, when the baby's born, you've got to disconnect her from her placenta, and you don't want blood all over the place, and you want to close off the umbilical cord. Forceps are the quickest way of doing this. You want some dental floss, because you're going to tie off that umbilical cord with a dental floss. You want an aspiration bulb. An aspiration bulb is a little kind of a rubbery thing with a tip on it and a bulb on the end, and you squeeze it down, you let it go, and it sucks up stuff, and you put it in the nose and the mouth, and you get out all the junk and stuff that's in the mouth. You want an aspiration bulb. What else? Those are things that you absolutely, if you don't have them, go get them. Put them in a box. If you're having Frenchies and you're going to do a C-section, still buy them. Have it in a box by the door. So if you've got to rush off to the vet, they're in the car with you in case you start having puppies on the road. Those are, if you don't get anything else from this video, you need to get that. That's what you need to have. All right, so here's some other things that we have. And these things are actually part of our puppy care. All that's in the puppy care kit. So what other things, well, except for the towels. What other things you should have? I like to have a stethoscope. Because if you've got a puppy in trouble, it's nice to be able to see whether it's breathing properly, specifically if its heart's beating, so you know what you've got to do next. Just a routine thing to have. You should have a thermometer, a digital thermometer. And by the way, you're going to be, if you've been looking at the other videos, you're going to be using that to time your C-section. So you need to have a digital thermometer. You need to have some scales, because at some point you're going to start weighing these puppies. Certainly you don't have to do that right when they're born, but we want to track their weight. You need to have some scales to do that. It's nice to have some alcohol wipes. Alcohol wipes, part of our care kit. And we also include iodine sticks, so that you can basically, what's the right word for it? I can't even think now. So you can sterilize the kind of the stump where you've cut the umbilical cord. Now there's some other things like puppy care kit. There's an otoscope, so you can look in their mouth and their nose. Not really part of this process. They're more of a weaning thing. We have goat's milk. We have feeding tubes. We have baby bottles. They're all part of that puppy care kit. And those are all things that you are going to need and have on hand, but you don't necessarily have to have this stuff when the very first puppies come out. A feeding bottle, feeding bottle, and tube. Feeding tube, look, feeding tube. Look, will you need a feeding tube? Only maybe a third of the time you need a feeding tube, but I promise you this, you try to find a feeding tube in your town, I bet you can't find it. if you try to find a feeding tube on a Saturday or Sunday, you are up the creek without a paddle. So what do I recommend? Well, of course, we want to sell our products, My Breed is Supply. We recommend that you buy our puppy care kit. But the important thing is that you've generally got these things, especially the things on the left-hand side. Got to have those things. Everybody should have those things. These things here, you're going to need very quickly after puppies have been born, certainly within the first 24 hours, and have them all on hand ahead of time. Don't, you're going to have your hands full. You're going to be worried about puppies. Don't have to also be worried about whether Walmart is open or whether you've got to make a trip across town. Get this stuff ahead of time. All right, so I think we are now ready for, well, so there it goes. Right, so what's going to happen? Well, if you've looked at the previous video, you'll see the behavior that you can expect from a dog that's getting close. Her temperature has dropped below 99. She's not eating food today. She just has been nesting. Hopefully you've got the actual box that you're going to whelp her in set up. Hopefully she's been in there. We'll talk about that maybe in another whole separate video. So you may end up with a part D on this by the time this is all finished. How much fun is that? But she's been nesting. Now she's panting. We've got imminent labor. You see the first contraction? Write it down. Get yourself a notepad. What we had was we had a basement, we had labs, and we wrote it on the wall. Okay, first contraction, 4 p.m. I don't know what time it is for you, but that's what we'll call it, 4 p.m. First contraction. Write it down because you'll lose track of this stuff. And what we want to do here is we want to establish how quickly the puppies are coming. Gives us an idea when we can expect another puppy. You can lose track of time, and we don't want to be in a situation where it's been 3 hours since the last puppy. We want to know where we are with this because you may have what's called loss of inertia, and you may have to go to a vet, have somebody step in, or you may be giving a shot of something like oxytocin. And so, first contraction. Time it, write it down. I know it sounds crazy, but it's so easy to do. Next contraction, 4:15. Write it down. Puppy comes, 4:32. Puppy born. Good. And log all this stuff down, especially after you've seen your first puppy. Start logging when these puppies start showing up because we want to see, you expect to see puppies being born one after another. You may have one, you might have one 5 minutes later. Typically, it'll be about, if it got lots of puppies, it may be every 30 minutes. Remember, she's got to get those puppies pushed down from up almost inside her ribs all the way down to the vaginal canal. It takes some time for that to happen. But we don't want to have a gap of 5 hours. If we had a gap of 5 hours, that's some important information, and we're probably going to be calling our vet up to get some professional help, because that's a dog that's in trouble, and that's useful information. If you can say to the vet, hey, I've been timing this, I haven't had a puppy, I've had 3 puppies, they've come half an hour apart, haven't had a puppy in 5 hours, can you help me? There'll be a lot more in tune of the fact that you know what the heck you're talking about, as opposed to you're just in a panic. Okay. So let's get that off the board. All right, so the important point here is I think it's free to log this stuff. Log it, keep track of it. Hopefully you won't need that information, but it's good information, and you will not remember this. If it's been 4 hours down the road and you're in trouble, you will not remember this, and that's good information for somebody who's going to help you out. Okay, so our first puppy is going to be born. Let's talk about the first puppy because this is where it's hands on deck. So a lot of dogs are going to handle the whole thing by themselves. I always helped and intervened, and I never had a dog that seemed like it was upset with me being part of the process. So some vets would say just let them get on with it, but I wanted to be there. The whole thing was pretty exciting. I want to be part of the process, and I certainly want to be there to make sure that the puppies and mum are okay. So what can you expect? Well, the first thing is, when a puppy is born, typically it's going to be born in an embryonic sac. You will see a balloon coming out of her vagina. So this drawing is terrible, so I apologize for this, but here's the tail of the dog. Here's the tail, and there's the dog's back. And what you're going to see is, I'm going to raise that up a little bit. I'm going to make that tail more like that. Okay. What you're going to see is there's an area above the vagina that will get all puffy and kind of loose. Here's the vagina itself. It'll get all puffy and loose, and you will see, because a puppy's coming down this way, you will see that first before you ever see a puppy being delivered. That little hooded area will be all flabby like the underneath of a loose arm skin, and all of a sudden it'll start bulging. That is the sign that here comes the first puppy. So, what do you see? So now we'll just draw this area up here a little bit better. So you're going to see this kind of hooded area will get bigger, and you will see a puppy. This will all swell up, and you'll see a bag coming out. And that bag will look kind of dark. There'll be a puppy in the middle of that. You can't make the puppy out, but the puppy's in that bag. And you won't know what color the puppy is. You'll think, oh, it's supposed to have a cream puppy. It looks dark. Don't worry about it. The puppy's coming. So that plops out on the ground. And what you're going to have is, if all goes well, you're going to have a puppy attached to, not by its tail, not unless you've got big problems, not unless you're attached with a placenta to a kind of a lump of livery-like substance, which is the placenta. And that placenta pulls away from the uterus wall when that puppy's being delivered. And so the puppy typically is attached to that placenta. Not always, but most of the time. So when this puppy is born, it is born with this sac all around it, but the water's probably broken, so that sac is deflated. So what's the first thing you got to do? Get the sac off the puppy's head. Pull that thing back, pull it away. You're not pulling the skin off. It just looks like a kind of a balloon. Get that thing off the puppy, especially its head, especially around its mouth, because guess what? It has just lost its blood supply to mum. Its life support system to mum just got severed right there. And when that is severed, this puppy has about 3 to 10 minutes before it takes its first breath. And if it doesn't take a breath within, well, not 3 to 10 minutes, 0 to 10 minutes, if he doesn't take a breath within 10 minutes, that puppy's not going to make it. So it's your job to get this puppy set up so that it can take the first breath successfully. Now, sometimes the water will break and you'll see a puppy coming out and they won't see any of this balloon at all, and you'll see a head or a leg or something coming out. You can go get your dry towel with your latex gloves on, you can grab hold of that puppy, and it's a downward pull. It's not a pull out this way, you pull down towards the floor. So it's going down towards their back legs. So if they're laying on their side, it's towards their legs. It's not straight up where the tail is. It's a gentle but firm pull, and all of a sudden that puppy will pop out, and hopefully he'll come out with the placenta. If it's attached to a stringy piece, which is the placenta, which is still up in here, try to get that placenta out. Pull on that string. You can pull on the string hard, but gently. I mean, consistently firm pressure. Don't be tug, 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 tug. It's a pull, because you'd like that placenta to come out in preparation for the next puppy. And that's something else that I've missed here that's very important about this process, is when you are got labor starting, go get yourself, and by the way, it should have been on the list. The list should include a tub of Vaseline. Very, very important. It's in our puppy care kit. I didn't put it on the list. It absolutely needs to be there. Vaseline. Don't skimp on this one. And get a tub of it. Don't be getting no little tube. When you buy a kit from us, you get a 13-ounce tub of Vaseline. Because you're going to take a dollop of that Vaseline and you're going to stick it up her vagina, and you're going to get your fingers in there and you're going to get it lubed up. That can make a huge difference to a stuck puppy. If you're in the Frenchy world and you were planning having a C-section, you got in trouble, it can make a difference between a stuck puppy and a puppy that's fine by just getting a whole bunch of Vaseline up inside her. Don't be generous with it. Don't be skimpy on this. Get some Vaseline up in it. Huge difference in the ability for mama to be able to pass that puppy. And I would be sticking Vaseline up there after every puppy. Just coat it back up. After every puppy, stick some more up in there. Especially if you've had a rough time on the previous puppy that she did. Okay, so what are the things that can happen here? Well, you can see a green discharge. Oh, one other thing. We had talked this on a previous video. Mucus plug. So you are quite likely going to see some jelly-like substance dropping out the back end of your girl, maybe days before she even has any puppies. And I get phone calls and texts about, oh, my puppy, the dog's in trouble, there's some jelly-like substance coming out. Is that a dead puppy? No. What that is, it's a jelly substance that blocks the opening of the cervix. And when she starts to dilate, that little mucus plug falls out and you'll see this jelly substance running on her legs or hanging off the back end of her. Quite fine. If it comes 5 days before, well, not a problem. If you don't even see it, not a problem. Don't worry about it. All right, so where are we now? Green discharge. So the placenta attaches mum to baby through the umbilical cord. If the placenta ruptures early, you get a green discharge, and that is a puppy that's lost its lifeline, and that puppy has got to be born within the next 10 minutes, otherwise you're very likely that will not survive. So if you see green discharge, if you just see a few green spots on the ground, don't worry about it, it's fine. But if you see a bunch of green, like somebody poured, a couple of ounces of green fluid on the floor, that one's a huge problem. That one requires that you find out what the heck's going on, and if you don't know, you go to the vet, because you're likely to start losing puppy or puppies. So that one's important. If you see that her water is broken, and you see an equivalent of about a cup of water on the ground, don't panic, that's fine. It's probably all part of the process. Her placenta is still attached to mum. That puppy's still fine. Nothing's going to go wrong just because you saw the water broke. So if the water breaks and you've got a Frenchie, it's time to go to the vet. But you've still got maybe a good half an hour before that puppy would be born and before it's in trouble. So that's not an event that requires that you just race to the vet. Okay, so maybe the water's broken. Hopefully we haven't seen a green discharge. We did see a puppy being delivered, or we did see a sac coming out. So now we've got a puppy. The puppy has been born. By the way, breech births, quite common in dogs, not common in human beings. Breech births in human beings are a big problem. We all know about those. So we think, oh, a breech birth in a dog, that's a disaster. It's not. So if you've got a dog that's being born and it's coming out tail first, its arms can get hung up, or a leg can get hung up. And so you can get your finger in there with some Vaseline and move your finger around and see if you can get that arm unstuck and push back up. And that'll, so if that puppy's hung up, you can get the arm stuck up in there and the puppy then comes out. So don't be too rough, but be consistent about getting a finger up in there. And if you feel the puppy, try to get some Vaseline up around it. It can make a big difference. And sometimes pushing the puppy back in there as you take some Vaseline and rub it around, and then the puppy can come back out, can help. All right. Puppy's been born. So now we've got a puppy that probably has the embryonic sac wrapped around it. So we need to get that off. So first order of day is to get the embryonic sac, peel it away from its face. Second order of the day is to take your forceps, clip it onto the umbilical cord, and here's the baby, here's its belly, and here's its back end, and here's the umbilical cord right here. So we've got umbilical and we've got a cord that runs off to this placenta. So just get your forceps anywhere in this area. It doesn't really matter. Just don't get too close to the baby because we're going to tie this off. But basically you're going to take your forceps and you're going to put your forceps right there. And you're going to clamp that down tight. And then you're going to cut this right here with your scissors. And then you chunk that in the bin. I don't let my mums eat this. Some people say it promotes contractions, maybe right, but I don't let them eat it. I think it may give them an upset stomach, so I just chunk that away. They will eat it if you don't, they'll eat it. And what you don't want is you don't want to put a puppy with the umbilical cord down in front of mum and rely on her to do this, because she'll chew it off and she may end up chewing it off too close to the baby's belly and you can get a herniated puppy, and that can cause you to lose a puppy. So I don't like mum. She'll want to do it, that's her evolutionary pressure, but I don't let her do it, I cut it. So what's the next thing I do? Well, I get my dental floss and I wrap it around a few times and I tie a knot. And then I clip this off nice and short. Nice and short. I want this to be, by the way, about a millimeter away from the baby's belly. A little bit there. It'll all dry off, but you don't want a lot of stuff hanging off, because when mum is starting to pay attention to her babies, she's going to nibble at that thing, and we don't want her doing that. We want that to dry off into a nice, very quickly small area that mum can't get hold of. If you make that thing nice and long, she'd have a temptation to chew on it and she may herniate the puppy again. All right. So we now have a puppy that doesn't have an embryonic sac around its head. It's been disconnected from its placenta. And now we have to get that puppy breathing. And what do you do to make that happen? And the answer is that you take that puppy, wrap it up in a towel so that because you want to get it dry. Whoops, I'm going to fall here. Keep dropping this crap. You want to get the puppy dry. A cold, wet puppy will get cold very quickly. Get your paper, get your hand towels, and just get that puppy cleaned up, and then hold it upside down and just start rubbing that puppy vigorously. Protect its head so its head's not bouncing around, but you want its head aiming to the floor because that helps all this fluid come out of its lungs. You've got this transition point between when the puppy was in the embryonic sac filled with embryonic fluid and its lungs were filled with embryonic fluid. You've got to get this transition from being supplied with the placental blood from mum to breathing air through its lungs. And you've got to get the air out of its lungs. So the first thing is get it upside down, start vigorously rubbing that puppy, get it dry. Go get your aspiration bulb, get it in its throat, suck up whatever fluid you can, dump it on the floor. Get it up on each nostril, suck it up. Keep doing that. Get as much fluid as you can out. You should get all the fluid out probably within a few goes, and then it's back to rubbing, holding it upside down. And what I like to do is I take the puppy like this. This is the puppy's head down this way. I take the puppy's head, I protect its head, and I start bouncing it. And start bouncing the puppy like this. Another way that you can do it is that you can take the puppy, put the puppy so its tail's up here, its head's down here, its head's on your hand, you cup it in your hand, and you do a swinging arc like this. And what you're doing here is you're letting centrifugal force get the fluid out of the puppy. And I do that too. It's called shaking the puppy down. Don't let go of the puppy. I promise you, it can happen. You want to make absolutely sure that you've got a firm grip and that you've got its head so its head can't slide out. So if you're going to do this business, watch around. Nobody else is in your way. You not have a tabletop or something that you're going to bash the puppy's head into, or a ceiling fan that's spinning. And there it is. It's about that quick, just like that. Just go like that and get that puppy, and then go get your aspiration bulb and suck it out some more. All right, so every puppy, if you're doing this and the next puppy's being born, get the important thing before you worry with the next puppy is to get the placenta removed, get this tied off, or leave the forceps on the dog, get it into a box with a heating pad and a towel, and then you can get on with the next puppy. But don't be distracted by this puppy that's being born until you've got this guy removed from the placenta with everything off its face and at least some forceps in here, and it's in a warm place. If you've got somebody else to help you, they need to start working on that dog until it takes its first breath. And that can take, especially dogs under anesthesia, which have had a C-section, man, it can be a while before you see the first breath, and it can be very worrying. Typically when they're born naturally, they'll start breathing pretty quick. They may even be crying very quickly. What you want is a dog that is starting to take regular breaths. As long as you get your first breath within 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, you're probably going to be okay. If you don't get a breath after 5 minutes, you've got to work on this dog because it'll start going blue on you. And it doesn't take much longer after that before that dog's in trouble and it's not going to survive. Okay, man, I'm rambling on here. This is an interesting time when this happens. I mean, it's all hands on deck. You're much better off having a few people with you, especially if you've got a Labrador or something like that that's going to have 12, 13, 15 puppies. They're coming at you pretty quick. You want to have some people there who can start rubbing these puppies down and paying attention to these puppies and getting them when they're breathing. Once they're breathing, or they're crying, then you can get them into a box with a towel, with a heating blanket, or a heat lamp on it. Or better yet, of course, this is what you should have, is you should have our incubator. This is absolutely the best thing to have. But you want to keep those puppies on. They do not have to nurse for the next hour or two. That's not critical. What's critical is they're breathing and they're warm. And that's your job at this point. Okay, so every time a puppy's born, it needs to be followed with a placenta. If you don't get a placenta with a puppy, it's still up inside mum. That's okay, because the next puppy will push it out. The last puppy needs to be born or followed up by a placenta. You do not want to leave a placenta in mum. And if you have left in the placenta in mum, you want to know it's in there because that can cause an infection. So you just want to be aware of the fact that you've got to pay special attention to a dog that has not produced a placenta on the last puppy that was born. Oxytocin. You should get this. Oxytocin. It's an injectable. It's inexpensive. You can buy this without a script. I would recommend that when you are finished whelping, that your mum gets a shot of oxytocin in her butt. I'm not going to give you the dosage because I don't want the liability on this. Don't ask me what the dosage is. You can Google it. But have some of this on hand. Give her a shot of that in her rump when she's had her last puppy. Will help with more contractions, getting that placenta that may have not been delivered, and generally help with milk letdown and cleaning her out. That's a good one to have. You'd really want that. If you haven't had a puppy for 3 hours, give a shot of oxytocin. You have to be careful with this stuff because if there's a blockage in there, she can't pass a puppy, and you start giving lots of oxytocin, the uterine pressures can get too high and you could actually rupture her uterus. I've never seen it happen, but I've been told it can happen. So you don't just start throwing oxytocin to a dog. You've got to give it, if you're going to give it later on in the birthing because she's run out of inertia, she's not had a puppy for many hours, give her a small amount of oxytocin. You can always give her another shot of oxytocin 30 minutes later, but just give small amounts of oxytocin. Don't be pouring the oxytocin to her. On C-sections, all the ones that we ever do, the mama always gets a shot of oxytocin on the table to help clean her out. So, you know, if you go to the vet, I'm certain they'll be giving oxytocin, or at least they should be. And I think that if you're going to have natural whelps at home, you should invest in, I don't know what it is for a bottle of it, $30, keeps in the fridge for a long time. I mean, more than you're ever going to use almost in a lifetime in a bottle, because you aren't hardly giving any of this. I mean, you know, a mil or half a mil or something. All right. Okay, so we have had our litter of puppies. When does the vet step in? If she hasn't had puppies for a while, how do you know she's had the last puppy? Because you either had an x-ray done or an ultrasound that counted the number of puppies that were in there. You can palpitate a dog, stand her up on her legs, squeeze her belly together and feel for the skulls of puppies. Remember, these puppies at this point are a decent size. You should be able to feel a puppy in there if there's a puppy to be had. So this whole process can take 24 hours. I mean, with labs, you know, we'd have 8 puppies within 3 hours. Nothing would happen for a few hours, and then here she's still up again. She'd have another 4 or 5 puppies. I've had puppies that have delivered over a 24-hour period. So you need to know when the last puppy's done, and if it's not, you've got to hang around and make sure that you are paying attention in case that she's running into problems. So what should mum's behavior be? Well, she'll be panting. Should you be giving her food and water? Not food. Give her a bit of water, but don't give her too much, especially if she's come back from a C-section, because you're likely to vomit it back up. Should you give her the placentas to eat? No, I don't think so. So you've got nice warm puppies, and I think we're going to have another part D. Is going to be actually nothing to do with progesterone, but since we did talk about this whelp, let's have another little talk about post-whelp, looking after the babies for the first 24 hours. I think I'm going to add that on, so I think you're going to get a part D. Hope that's not upsetting anybody. So I think we'll have a part D coming up. All right, I hope you're enjoying it. I hope it's useful. Please subscribe to us. Go check us out. We've got wonderful stud dogs. We have great products that will help you through this whole process that you absolutely should have, whether you get them from us or somebody else. You need to be thinking about getting prepared. Look after your doggies. Good luck with your whelps. Bye.